All right, the Republican tax bill will get voted on today right here in the House of Representatives. They are expressing extreme amounts of confidence. Paul Ryan basically skipping through the halls of the Capitol this morning, from which point it will go straight across the Capitol over here to the Senate, and they are saying that they're going to vote on it as early as this evening. You know, there is a theory in legislative politics that says when you have the votes, you take the vote. Don't leave anything to chance. These are some squirrely figures, and you don't want to have to bribe them again to get them back into the net. Once you got them in the net, get it out of the water, get the fish in the boat. So the thinking is that after Ryan pushes the bill through the House, they're going to push it right over to the Senate and finish it up tonight, at which point it goes up Pennsylvania Avenue, which is behind us, to Donald Trump, and he signs it into law. There are $4.5 trillion worth of tax hikes that will be applied across the board, but mainly to middle class and poor people. There are then $6 trillion in tax cuts that go almost exclusively to the wealthy. The gap in there, about $1.5 trillion, then gets added to the deficit. So what you have is a huge transfer of trillions of dollars worth of wealth from the poor and the middle class up into the pockets of the super wealthy. That's the simplest way you can put it. Now, it's been a rocky road the last couple of days, particularly thanks to TYT reporter David Sirota, whose piece in the International Business Times was the first to highlight the fact that Senator Bob Corker, who has a ton of wealth tied up in real estate interests, just as President Trump does, suddenly flipped his vote at the last minute, giving the bill the momentum that it needed to get over the top, after a provision was entered into it that would give people whose wealth is tied up in real estate a much huger tax break as a result of it. Now, Bob Corker has protested loudly that this is a total and complete coincidence. What a surprise that this measure was airdropped in during the conference committee at the last minute, and that he is voting for this for patriotic reasons, because he feels like that while it is an imperfect bill, America will be better off with it than America would be without it. That remains to be seen. What is certain is that Bob Corker will be much better off with this bill than he would have been without it. Another senator who hasn't gotten as much attention recently, but went through a similar evolution, is Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin. Senator Ron Johnson ran for the Senate in 2010 because he was watching Fox News, and somebody said, you know, if there's anybody rich out there in Wisconsin, they should run against Russ Feingold. I think he's vulnerable. And Ron Johnson has told this story. He was sitting there watching Fox News. He said, hey, I'm a rich guy. I can run against Feingold. And he wound up winning in the Tea Party wave of 2010, where a lot of people got swept out. The question of how Ron Johnson got rich is a very interesting one. He married a woman whose father was extremely rich because his father ran a plastics company that kind of cornered the market in Midwestern plastics. So Ron Johnson went and set up a plastics related company whose only customer was his father-in-law. Through that process, he got extraordinarily rich. He lent his campaign around $10 million to run for Senate, and the company gave him about a $10 million payout right at the exact same time, which Ron Johnson again said in total coincidence. There's no way that the company was funding my entire campaign. That would be illegal. That couldn't have happened. This was a coincidence. I gave the campaign a loan, and then I just happened to get roughly the same amount of money from the company. Now, Ron Johnson was saying that he was going to be against this bill publicly because he said it didn't treat pass-through corporations as well as it treated corporations like Apple or Microsoft. A pass-through corporation is one that's kind of family-owned, and the income in it passes through to the owners of the company, and the owners then pay individual tax rates, whereas the corporate tax code is entirely different. Now, there is a segment of left-wing economists that I actually kind of agree with that says we shouldn't even have a corporate tax code. Forget it. They're just going to game it, and it's going to create a huge industry of tax avoidance. Have a 0% corporate tax rate, have all the money flow through to shareholders and owners and employees, and then tax it. Get it there rather than trying to get it in both places. Regardless, that's not the system we have. Right now there's a corporate tax rate and there's an individual rate, and Johnson was complaining that it wasn't fair to companies like his own, like his father-in-law's company. All of his wealth is tied up in pass-through income, and he demanded that the tax rates on pass-through income be significantly lowered in order to vote for it. No, he demanded a change in the bill that was worth millions to him and to his family, and after he got it, he turned around and said that he would vote yes. From here, the real looting begins. After Republicans pass this tax bill and it goes to the White House and is signed by President Trump, then the IRS starts to write the regulations about how this sloppy bill that was slapped together over a span of a couple weeks will be actually implemented. And that's what really matters. You know, if Congress lays out a particular provision, but the IRS steers it in a different direction, taxpayers, with the help of their Big Four accounting firm, can then rely on that regulation and the guidance that comes from their tax attorneys as to what they're legally obligated to pay. And I'll just read, this is from a lobbyist emailing me this morning about how the process is going to work from here. He says, so a law firm will draft a proposed regulation that benefits their client. A public affairs campaign will be structured around getting the regulations drafted correctly with op-eds and media coverage. And then someone will hire us to hand the proposed regulation and the favorable press clips to the lawmakers and the agencies. We should all be registered as lobbyists, including the media outlets who accept our advertising. Unfortunately, the lobbyists are the only ones to disclose their role in this process.